fandom friends! Today we are going to be talking about RWBY, but the anime. So you might be familiar with the original RWBY, but that's actually American made and not Japanese made like this anime is. It is called Ice Queendom, and if you're curious, I actually did watch the original first. I actually just went through the whole series with my partner, and then we watched the anime, which is what I highly suggest you do as well if you have not seen any of it. So first, I'm going to be talking about non-spoilers, so if you have not seen the anime RWBY or any RWBY, you are in a safe spot for now because I will not be talking about spoilers for another few minutes. If you know absolutely nothing about RWBY, I'll give you a very short summary, but basically we follow these kids. They are in a certain kingdom, kind of in a class setting, so kind of like Harry Potter, but it's very different. They have very specialized weapons that they use that kind of morph into multiple different weapons, and they have a certain power, which I don't want to spoil too much about that, but that's something that you will learn in the anime and then also the original RWBY. So since we are just talking about the anime RWBY today, I want to give a huge shout out to, of course, the animation and the voice actors. I actually watched this anime in English dub. This is something I've never done before for an anime. I always watch in Japanese, but the reason why is because I watched the original RWBY in, the format that it was created in, which is in English. And so it felt only right to watch this anime in English because it's based off of an American story. All of the voice actors that were actually in the original RWBY came back for the anime RWBY, which is just incredible. Like that, I feel like that's any audience's dream, is for those original voice actors to come back. And so I just had to watch the anime with those voice actors. So huge shout out to them. I also will probably go back and watch certain parts of the anime in Japanese because a lot of those voice actors are ones that I'm very familiar with. The main character, RWBY, of course, being the voice of Yor from Spy Family, Shinobu and Demon Slayer, and so many other amazing ones. So that is something that I definitely want to go back to and support both the sub and the dub. So amazing shout out for all of the voice actors that were involved in this anime. And of course, the animation being so beautiful. The animation for the original and the anime are both just so great in my opinion. If you have watched the original RWBY but not the anime, what I will say is that the first 3-ish episodes follow pretty closely to the original kind of storyline of RWBY, and then it kind of goes off charts a little bit with a whole new kind of brand new story and segment with the characters that of course we love. There's a couple new characters thrown in, but for the most part we have all of the same characters with their same personalities, weapons, kind of abilities, just a completely different story that's kind of just added in. And also what I will say is that those first 3 episodes go by very fast. The pacing of them is almost a little bit too fast in my opinion at sometimes, just because we get parts from like season 1, 2, and a little of season 3 all crammed into this one season of the anime, plus like the majority of new content story that they're showing in this first season. And so what I will say about this anime is that I really did enjoy it. However, I think that the original is just always going to, be a little bit better because that's where the original story took off. That's where the audience fell in love with the characters if you were like me and watched the original one first. And so what I will say about the anime RWBY is that it is a great storyline to watch. It's super fun. There is nothing really negative that I have to say about it other than the fact that it is a remake. And so of course when you take a story from the original work and turn it into this kind of remake of a story that has the same elements and then has different elements, and we have of course different storylines that different storytellers want to tell, it's going to be very different. Something that jumps to my mind is having a book or a book series and then turning that into a movie or a TV series. It's kind of like that, where the book has so much more detail and things that are usually, not in the remake of like the TV show or the movie. And I feel like the anime RWBY was definitely kind of along those same lines. If I could compare it to a specific example, when I was watching the anime RWBY, it kind of reminded me of Avatar: The Last Airbender with the live action TV show that we got last year. And not to say that that TV show was bad in any way, because I don't think it was, but it's just very different than the original. And so I think if you were to watch this anime version of RWBY as like a standalone or an add-on to watching the original series, I think it's totally fine. I personally really enjoyed the story. It just did not captivate me as much as the original. If you are at all interested in the RWBY story, if you have not watched the original and not watched the anime, I highly suggest watching the original first and then going to the anime. But as a whole, that is going to wrap it up for the non-spoilery section. But know that I will have other videos to come about my whole breakdown and thoughts of the original RWBY series, and probably more to come for RWBY videos in general, because I really enjoy this story. We are going to now be jumping into spoilers. There will be, of course, spoilers for the anime RWBY, a little bit from the original series as well, so please tread with caution. If you have to, leave the video now and come back. I will not have hurt feelings. I just want you to enjoy this RWBY story as a whole, so go take care of whatever you need to take care of and then come back. Instead of blab on about all the pros or all the cons, I'm kind of going to go back and forth between some bullet points I wrote down about some topics that I wanted to talk about, so we keep it very balanced. So to start off with a positive, I really like how the anime started off and ended with the voice of Salem kind of narrating. Sometimes it was Ozpin kind of jumping in there as well, but it was mostly Salem. And if you watch the original, of course, you know Salem more as a character, as kind of, you know, the big villain that we have in this story, which isn't really introduced in the anime yet. Of course, if they continue, she will be, because she's narrating this whole part. But I thought that that was a really cool highlight for, of course, people who have seen the original and then comparing it to the anime. It's kind of like an Easter egg for if people are watching the anime first, they can go back to the original and be like, oh, hey, that's Salem's voice. Or, you know, of course, the other way around, which is what I was. Jumping to a con that I kind of picked up on throughout the anime is, again, I felt like the pacing was a little bit too fast compared to the original. Of course, I know it's a remake, and so they're wanting to get through as much content as they can so that they can show off new storylines, which of course they did with the whole dream sequence with Weiss and then Blake later on. But I felt like it was a little bit uncomfortable at times with how fast it was going. Something that sticks out to me is that in the first couple of episodes, they really highlighted RWBY, Weiss, and Blake's introduction video like we had for the original series, but they kind of omitted Yang's, which I thought was a little bit strange. They just kind of took out her whole sequence of fighting at the bar. And so things like that, where it just didn't feel like balanced as much. But again, that's just my opinion. Of course, I know they have to flesh out the story. It's a whole remake, so it's really up to them at the end of the day. Jumping to something that I really enjoyed, a pro in all of this, was during Weiss's whole dream sequence, I really liked how prominently they were describing and visualizing that Weiss's character is based off of Snow White. I don't know why, but that's not really something I put together in the original series, even though it's very clear. Different examples of this that they showed specifically in the anime were the apple in her dream, the whole mirror sequence, and so many other little details that I feel like were scattered throughout her dream sequence. To add on to that is kind of a con. If people are watching the anime before watching the original, I kind of felt like it painted Weiss's family in a very like insane way, which is understandable because of course that is kind of how Weiss views them. Of course, she sees her dad as having this place of power and control over her and her family, and her brother as being this like nuisance. And of course we see him like flying around as a bat and she's telling him to be quiet every second she can. Something that viewers don't know if they don't watch the original is that her mom is actually the kind of shadow person that's in the background drinking. That wasn't explained at all, and of course it didn't really make sense for it to be explained in kind of this dream sequence because it would have been a little random. Seeing her family in kind of this whole dream chaotic state first almost alters the viewer's brain to already kind of just hate her whole family without even meeting them first, which I feel like the original did very well because we got to really flesh out all of her family members and see the good parts, the bad parts, the in-between, not just this kind of judgmental side of it from Weiss's dream. So that kind of bothered me a little bit, but being a viewer that watched the original series first and then the anime, I did enjoy it because it made a lot of sense. Jumping to kind of the end sequences of this whole season is Blake and her transformation to kind of her old self being a part of White Fang. I really loved how well this was done. Ultimately, like her decision, of course, to do that to help Weiss out of the whole trance dreamlike state, but also the way in which the creators and the artists depicted her character when she was infected. And this was something that me and my partner both picked up on right away, is how clearly she also resembled Adam. And it was kind of this mix of Blake and Adam together, which is kind of what she would have become if she would have stayed with Adam. And of course, being a viewer that watched the original first, I understood this and I took all of that information and kind of created it into probably what the creators wanted the audience to see and visualize. But if you're watching the anime for the first time, I felt like that was kind of a missed opportunity, maybe even just an Easter egg or like foreshadowing for later in the story. So it's not like the end of the world, but that was like something that kind of bothered me a little bit, is it kind of seemed like a waste opportunity for Adam and her character if you had not understood and seen the original series first. The last thing I'm going to talk about is this whole dream kind of sequence and Xion in general. So Xion is, of course, the character who has the kind of dream-like semblance. However, it was never really clear what their semblance was. We know that it's obviously related to this dream-like state and these nightmares in some way, but there was so much going on that I kind of felt confused about what Shihon's semblance really was. As much as I really liked all of the nightmare stuff and jumping into Weiss's dream, and then of course the pieces we got of Blake, I'm just not quite sure it fits in the storyline, especially since they had all just gotten to the school and had been admitted, and you know, just learning all about these new students that they're going to carry out the rest of their years with. While learning, it just kind of seemed like they didn't know each other as well yet, and I think that was another issue I had with the pacing, is that we started this whole dream thing around like episode 4. I felt like the characters were like still just trying to know each other and respect each other. On the flip side of that, I also understand that a lot of that nightmare stuff that happened with Weiss was because of that whole disagreement and argument that Weiss and Blake had. And so I understand kind of that part of it, but I just felt this like constant confliction when I was thinking about this whole kind of season as a whole with this whole nightmare thing. And again, like I said at the beginning of the video, I think that this season and this story that they're creating is a very nice add-on to the original, but my mind always strays back to the original, of course, with the, you know, original creator and voice actors and art style and everything that we have there. But all in all, I still really enjoyed the anime, and I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much if I had watched that first instead of watching the original first, like I did. So I'm really happy I watched the original first and then went into the anime. That's of course the order that I suggest people do it in. And I just hope that we get more RWBY as a whole from the original and the anime. So all in all, I'm just excited for what is to come for RWBY and all of the characters that we all love so much. If you have any opinions about the anime or the original, I would absolutely love to hear from you in the comments. Again, I will be making a video about all my thoughts and my breakdown about the original RWBY because I was absolutely blown away by it and I did not think I would be. And I finished that late last year, so it is very fresh in my mind still, and I am ready and eager to make a video for it. With that, I hope you enjoyed, and let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!